The salvage bay of the Nestrex smelled of ozone and cold metal. The air had a sting to it, sharp at the back of the throat, and the only light came from the bioluminescent panels set into the curved ceiling. They pulsed in a slow, irregular rhythm, not a heartbeat, something slower, more patient. Maia Calder crouched over the piece of wreckage she had hauled out of the derelict's cargo bay. Her gloved fingers traced the surface of a black cube no larger than a carry case. The cold bit through the insulation of her glove after 3 seconds. She pulled her hand back and flexed her fingers. 4 times as heavy as it should be, slick to the touch but never wet, and cold in a way that did not match the ambient temperature of the bay. She heard Leto before she saw him. The soft rustle of interwoven stalks moving across the deck, a sound like dry leaves stirred by wind. She turned her head but kept her hand near the utility knife on her belt. Leto of the Sporewind stood 2 meters tall, a column of pale green stalks that twisted around each other in a pattern she had learned to read as formal posture. His sensory cilia pulsed at the tips of each stalk, a soft bioluminescence that brightened when he spoke. He carried his gift rattles today, 3 dried seed pods tied to his central stalk. He touched them as he stopped 2 meters from her. Maia Calder, he said. The translator unit at her collar rendered his chemical signals as a voice, neutral, slightly formal, with a faint echo. I would ask for a word in private. She straightened. Her knees protested from hours of crouching. She kept her hand where it was. We are in private, she said. Her voice was flat, practical. Leto's cilia flickered. His stalks shifted in a gesture she did not recognize. In more private, he said. She looked around the salvage bay. 2 other Sporewind crew worked at the far end, their stalks bent over a panel of bioluminescent mat that was regenerating a section of hull. They were too far to hear, but they could see. Fine, she said. She did not move her hand from the knife. Leto stepped closer. His stalks rustled as he lowered himself into a sitting position, bringing his cilia closer to her eye level. It was a gesture of trust among his people. She had read the briefing. She did not return it. The cube, he said. His cilia pulsed faster. It is an artifact of a species my people call the Hollow. Maia said nothing. She waited. The Hollow vanished before the Sporewind developed spaceflight. Leto continued. They left very little behind. This is one of those pieces. He stopped. His cilia dimmed, then brightened again. I wish to buy it from you. Maia looked at the cube, then back at Leto. Why? The question landed flat. Leto's stalks tightened. His cilia pulsed hard, a rapid flicker of light that she had learned meant stress or uncertainty. The cube is a key, he said. It opens something my people have been searching for over a very long cycle. Maia's finger tapped against her thigh, once, twice, a rhythm she did not control. I'm not selling something until I know what it opens, she said. Leto's cilia flared bright. He reached into a fold of his stalks and pulled out a small resin chip. It was the color of dried blood and about the size of her thumbnail. He pressed it into her palm. The surface was warm, like living skin. A payment, he said. For your time, you may think about the offer. Maia looked at the chip. She knew the denomination by its weight and warmth. It represented more money than she had seen in her entire life. More than enough to buy passage out of the dead-end system where she was born. Enough to never have to salvage another derelict again. She closed her fingers around it. Then she looked back at the cube. The cold of it had seeped through her glove earlier, a deep cold that did not come from temperature. A cold that came from the material itself. She turned the chip over in her palm. I want to see what the cube opens, she said, before I decide. Leto's stalks went rigid. Every cilia on his body stopped pulsing at once. The silence stretched for 3 full breaths. That, he said, is not possible. The translator rendered his voice flat, but his body said something else, the stiffness in his stalks. The way his gift rattles had gone still, he was afraid. Maia tapped her finger against her thigh, faster now. A careful trader did not offer a fortune for something they could explain. A careful trader did not get rigid when someone asked to see what they were buying. She had been salvaging for 12 years. She knew when someone was hiding the real price. She opened her mouth to push harder. Leto's cilia flared bright white. He spoke before she could. If you insist on seeing what the cube opens, he said, I will take you there myself. His stalks bent forward. The gesture was formal, final. But I will not guarantee your return. The bioluminescent panels pulsed overhead. Slow, irregular, the smell of ozone and cold metal filled her lungs. Maia looked at the cube, then at the resin chip in her palm, then at the Sporewind trader who had just told her she might not come back. She slid the chip into her pocket. "Show me," she said. The Nestrex bridge smelled like soil and cut grass. Maia kept one hand braced against a console that felt more like a mushroom cap than machinery. The amber glow from the mycelial display screens cast everything in a warm, sepia light that made the Sporewind crew look like they were growing out of the floor. Leto stood at the center of the space. His stalks swayed with a slow, rhythmic motion that matched the pulsing of the cilia at their tips. Maia tapped her finger against her thigh. The thrum of the gravitic drive vibrated through her boots up into her spine. She had been reading for 6 hours. Her eyes ached, but she had the information. The Hollow were not a species. The word described a stage, a classification for cultures that hit a specific threshold of technological development and then did something the galaxy could not predict. They ascended. They died. They transformed into something that left no trace except cubes, black, cold, impossibly heavy cubes. Every Hollow site had one. The cubes were always placed at the exact center of whatever structure they had built, like a spine, like a seed. Maia lifted her gaze from the display. Leto's cilia flickered. The two Sporewind crew at the navigation consoles swayed in perfect unison. Their stalks bent toward the screens at identical angles. The synchronization was unsettling. She said what was at the center of this one. Leto's gift rattles clicked softly against his central stalk. He touched them with the tip of one pale green tendril. "I do not know." The admission came out flat, chemical. "You have a cube that opens something," Maia pressed. "You have a site, and you do not know what is inside. We have been unable to approach the site for 3 centuries. Leto's voice carried a frequency that vibrated in her chest. "The gravity anomaly around the system's gas giant is unstable. It shifts. It tears at hulls. We have lost 3 survey vessels to it." Maia waited. "The cube acts as a stabilizer." Leto gestured toward the display screen with a sweep of his stalks. "It creates a path through the anomaly, one path, one window." The screen showed a swirl of white distortion against the black. It looked like a storm, like something alive. "How long until we arrive?" Leto pointed at a readout in the upper corner. The numbers were chemical symbols. She could not read them. He said 6 hours. 6 hours. She felt the thrum of the drive through her boots. It was steady, reliable, the only thing on this ship that was. "What do you expect to find?" Leto's cilia dimmed. They went from a bright, pulsing white to a soft, steady amber glow that matched the displays. The change was gradual, controlled. He said, "I expect a graveyard." The silence stretched. The gravitic drive hummed. One of the crew at the navigation console adjusted a setting, and the deck shifted slightly beneath her feet. Leto's stalks bent toward her. Not a threat, something softer. "What I hope to find is something else entirely." Maia stopped tapping her finger. She crossed her arms instead. The motion pulled at the scars across her forearms. She felt the tightness of the skin. "Tell me." Leto's cilia pulsed once, twice, a slow rhythm like a heartbeat. "My hive has been declining for 4 generations." His voice dropped. The frequency became something that felt like pressure against her skull. "Our genetic diversity is collapsing. We cannot sustain ourselves. We are dying from within." Maia said nothing. "The Hollow sites contain biotech archives." Leto's stalk straightened. "If I can recover one functional archive, I can repair our genetics. I can save my hive." He paused. The gift rattles clicked as he shifted his weight. "I am not doing this for profit." His cilia dimmed further. "I am doing it because I have no other option." Maia held still. The chemical smell of the crew surrounded her. Damp earth, cut grass, the sharp undertone of something she could not name. She understood having no options. She had grown up in a system where the word itself was a joke. Everyone had options if the price was right, except people like her, people without the cost of passage. She looked at the display. The distortion swirled, 6 hours away. "Show me the rest of the research," she said. "The Hollow, the sites, everything you have." Leto's cilia brightened, just slightly. "You have already seen." "I want to see it again." She kept her voice flat. "I want to understand what I am walking into." Leto hesitated. His stalks swayed. Then he gestured toward a secondary console near the back of the bridge. The screen there was darker, older. "You have 6 hours," he said. Maia moved toward it. She did not look back. The data was dense. The Sporewind had mapped 14 hollow sites across 7 star systems. The artifacts recovered from each site were chemically identical but structurally different. A tool from one site would not interface with a machine from another. The species were unrelated. The technology was incompatible. But every site had a cube, and every cube was the same. Maia scrolled through the chemical analysis. The cube's material did not exist in the periodic table of any known species. It was not an alloy. It was not a crystal. It was something that did not decay, did not heat, did not react to anything except extreme gravity. The anchor, the Sporewind called it that in their own language, a weight that held something in place. She read about the site they were approaching. It had been discovered by a Calvari survey vessel 3 centuries ago. The Calvari had sent a single drone through the anomaly. The drone transmitted for 4 minutes before the signal cut. The footage showed a structure built from material that reflected no light. It was a hole in the universe. The drone went inside. The footage ended. The Calvari never recovered the drone. They never sent another. The site was abandoned until Leto's hive found the cube in a derelict cargo hold on the edge of the system. They had been searching for 3 generations. They had finally found a key. Maia looked up from the screen. The amber glow had not changed. The hum of the drive had not changed. She had been reading for 5 hours. She turned to find Leto still standing at the center of the bridge. His stalks were still. His cilia glowed with the same steady light. "You could have sold the cube to the council," she said. "They would have paid enough to save your hive." Leto's gift rattles clicked, a deliberate motion. "The council would have taken the archive for themselves. They would have given us enough genetic material to survive another generation. No more." Maia nodded. "You gambled on a human." Leto's cilia pulsed once. "You are the first human I have met who did not try to sell me something I did not want." She almost smiled, almost. The proximity alarm began to chime. It was a low, resonant tone that vibrated through the deck plates. The 2 crew at the navigation console stiffened. Their stalks went rigid. Leto turned toward the display. The white distortion filled the screen now. It was close, too close. One of the crew spoke in rapid chemical bursts. Leto's cilia flared bright white. "The anomaly is compressing," he said. "The window is closing faster than the old surveys predicted." Maia felt the deck shift beneath her. The gravitic drive changed pitch. It was straining. Leto looked at the display, then he looked at her. "I have to decide now." His voice carried an edge she had not heard before. "We commit to the jump or we turn back." The alarm chimed again. The distortion on the screen pulsed. It was shrinking. Maia looked at the cube. It sat on a secured table near the bridge entrance, black and cold and impossibly heavy. A key to a graveyard, or to something else. She looked back at Leto. "What do you need from me to make that decision?" Leto's stalks bent toward her. His cilia dimmed to that soft amber glow. "I need to know if you believe I will bring you back." Maia held his gaze. The scars on her forearms pulled tight as she uncrossed her arms. "I do not believe anything yet," she said, "but I came this far." The alarm chimed a 3rd time, longer than the others. The deck shuddered. Leto turned to the navigation console. The observation dome went dark. Not the darkness of vacuum, the darkness of a gravitational field bending every photon that tried to cross it. Leto stood at the helm station, his stalks braced against the deck, all 4 of his gift rattles silent. Behind him, Maia Calder held the cube in both hands. Her knuckles were white. The ship groaned. Leto gave the order. The Nestrex mycelial network pulsed once, a slow amber confirmation, and then the engines pushed them forward. The gravity anomaly caught them like a fist closing around a seed pod. The dome went from dark to white. A blinding, featureless blur filled every panel, every transparent surface. Leto felt the ship's frame twist beneath him. The groan deepened into a sound he had never heard from his vessel, a structural protest that ran up through his stalks and into his central cluster. He touched one of his gift rattles, a nervous gesture he had not made since his first solo voyage. The cube began to vibrate. Maia pressed it against the dome's surface. The white blur changed. Patterns emerged, geometric and precise, carved into the chaos of bent light. A pathway. Leto's cilia flattened. He had spent cycles studying the hollow archives. He had seen nothing like this. The patterns were not navigation markers. They were the anomaly's skeleton exposed by the cube's presence. He steered the ship along the pathway. The groaning stopped. The light outside dimmed. Gray twilight replaced the white, then a softer darkness, and then they emerged into a pocket of normal space at the heart of the anomaly. Leto's stalks went rigid. The structure floated in the gray void. A sphere the size of a small moon, its surface a lattice of black and silver. No seams, no docking ports, no indication of purpose or origin. It hung in the nothing like a seed waiting for soil. Maia's voice came from behind him, flat and controlled. The cube is reacting, warm now, almost hot, vibrating. Leto turned. She held the cube out, palm open. A low hum filled the dome, a sound he felt through his stalks more than heard through his cilia. He brought the ship closer. The sphere's surface began to shift. The lattice rearranged itself, silver flowing into black, black bleeding into silver, and a hexagonal aperture opened, large enough for the Nestrek to pass through. The interior beyond the aperture was dark but not empty, a deeper darkness that seemed to pull at the light around it. Leto hesitated. The aperture was an invitation. It could also be a trap. The hollow had been gone longer than any living species remembered. What they left behind was not designed for guests. It was designed for something else. Maia stepped toward the airlock. "We came this far," she said. Leto did not answer. He felt the cube's vibration through the deck plates now, a low, rhythmic hum that pulsed in time with something deeper, something that resonated in his own genetic memory. He touched his central stalk. The hum was not random. It was a signal. The cube was not a key. It was a transmitter. The hollow structure had been waiting for someone to bring a cube back. The cubes were never meant to be kept. They were meant to return here to complete a circuit that had been open for longer than Leto's species had existed. He did not say this aloud. He did not know how to say it. The words would have meant nothing to Maia, and they meant too much to him. He gave the order to proceed. The Nestrek drifted through the hexagonal aperture. The darkness of the sphere's interior swallowed them, and for a moment there was nothing, no light, no sound, no vibration from the hull. Leto's cilia flattened against his stalks. He felt the absence of gravity for a fraction of a heartbeat. Then the light returned. It came from everywhere at once. Not a source, not a direction, the light was the space itself, a golden radiance that had no shadow. Leto's stalks straightened in shock. The interior of the sphere was not a hollow chamber. It was a volume of folded space, larger than the sphere's exterior dimensions by a factor that his mind could not calculate. The walls shimmered with trapped light that should not exist. And in the center of that light, something was moving. A shape dark, silent. It was too large to be a ship and too small to be a station. It rotated slowly, a core of black metal surrounded by a haze of silver motes, and as Leto watched, the motes began to coalesce. Maia stepped back from the dome. The cube in her hand was glowing now, a deep amber pulse that matched the light outside. She did not drop it. She held it tighter. Leto touched his gift rattles again. They were warm. He had never felt them warm before. They were made of dried seed pods from his home hive, a gift from the elders when he first took command. They should not have been warm. The shape in the center of the light stopped rotating. It faced them. The silver motes resolved into a figure, humanoid, but only in the way that a tree is humanoid. Tall, narrow, made of light and something else, something that pressed against Leto's awareness like a chemical signal he could not decode. A voice came from nowhere and everywhere. The chorus of whispers resolved into words. "You brought it back." Leto's cilia flattened. He did not know if the voice was speaking to him or to Maia. He did not know if it was speaking to either of them. Maia looked down at the cube in her hand. The amber glow had brightened. The hum had deepened. "I didn't steal it," she said. "I found it." The silver figure tilted. The motion was too smooth, too continuous, as if the being had no joints and no skeletal structure. Found is not the same as stolen, but the cube came home. That is what matters. Leto stepped forward. His stalks brushed against the helm station, and he felt the Nestrek's mycelial network pulse with a slow, confused distress. The ship did not understand what it was seeing. Neither did he. "Who are you?" he asked. The silver figure turned toward him. The motes that formed its shape shifted, and for a moment Leto saw something beneath them, a core of black metal, the same material as the cube, the same surface that was slick but never wet. "We are what the hollow became." Leto's gift rattles went silent. The warmth drained from them. The hollow had not died. They had not ascended to another plane. They had come here to this sphere, and they had done something else entirely. something that had left only cubes behind. Maia lifted the cube. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "Why?" she asked. "Why leave the cubes behind?" The silver figure did not answer immediately. The light around them pulsed, and the shape in the center of the chamber began to move again, a slow rotation, a deliberate unfolding. Because the cubes were the seeds. The voice carried something Leto had never heard from another species. It carried regret. And the seeds have found soil again. The sphere's interior light shifted. The walls shimmered, and through them Leto saw shapes. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Cubes floating in the golden radiance, each one identical to the one Maia held. They had all come home. One by one, they were waking. The membrane floor swallowed Maia's footsteps without a sound. She stood in a cavern of silver light, the cold air empty of any scent, and watched a shape begin to coalesce ahead. Silver motes drifted together like dust caught in a current. They formed a silhouette, humanoid but not human, a suggestion of shoulders, a tilt of head, a presence that watched without eyes. The voice came from everywhere at once. It filled the space behind her ears and inside her chest. A rolling sequence of tones that meant nothing to Maia but made Leto's cilia flare bright white. Leto's stalks bent forward in a formal posture. He spoke, and his own voice sounded thin against the resonance in the air. The voice speaks a dialect of Veilshard, an ancient psionic language. His gift rattles clicked softly as he touched them. It asked who bears the key. Maia lifted the cube. The black surface drank the silver light around it. The shape in the air grew still. The motes stopped drifting. They hung suspended, frozen in place. The voice spoke again, longer this time. The tones coiled and layered on top of each other. Leto's cilia trembled. He said the key must be placed in the receptacle at the center of the chamber. Alone. Just her. Maia looked at the cube in her hands, 4 times heavier than it should be, cold against her palms. She asked what happens then. Leto listened. He translated. The archive will open. The knowledge within will be transferred to the bearer of the key. What kind of knowledge? The silver shape turned. Its head tilted at an angle no human neck could achieve. The voice spoke again, and this time the sounds shifted. They cracked. They reformed. It said the knowledge of the hollows. All of it. Every species that passed through this stage of development left a record here. The voice shaped human words with an accent that did not come from any mouth. Rough approximations. Vowels stretched too long, consonants clipped short. It spoke as if it had learned language from reading it, not speaking it. Maia asked why. The silver motes drifted again. The shape seemed to breathe. The hollows did not die. They changed. They left these records as a gift for the next ones to come. She looked at Leto. His stalks were trembling now, the entire column of his body vibrating. His cilia pulsed in a rapid staccato rhythm, faster than she had ever seen. She looked back at the silver shape. Will the transfer hurt? The voice paused, a silence that pressed against the inside of her skull. Yes. Leto touched his gift rattles, the first time he had done so since they entered the sphere. The dried seed pods clicked against each other, a dry and desperate sound. His stalks sagged slightly. He said his people have legends of the hollows, passed down through generations of spore memory. The legends say the hollows were not a race. They were a condition, a state of being that could be entered and left behind. The silver shape resolved into a clearer outline. Shoulders widened, a tilt of the head that almost looked human. The voice confirmed. The hollows were a choice, not a birthright, and the archive is not a library, it is a transformation. Maia understood then. The cube was not a key to a door. It was a key to a change. A change that would unlock not a room full of records, but a process that would turn her into something that could hold those records. Something that could carry the weight of every species that had come before. She asked what would happen to her. The voice said it did not know. Every bearer was different. Every species carried the archive differently. The knowledge would remain. What was left after the knowledge settled was unique to each bearer. Leto's gift rattles clicked again. His cilia dimmed to a pale blue. He said if she did not want to do this, he would not force her. The cube could be returned to the hollows. They could leave. She heard the weight in his voice, the genetic collapse of his hive. The archive was the only thing that could save them. And yet he was offering to leave. Maia looked at the silver shape. She looked at the cube in her hands. She thought about the Salvage bay on the Nestrek, the dead-end system where she was born, the loneliness she carried like a second skeleton. She started walking. The membrane floor stretched ahead of her. The silver light pulsed in a slow rhythm, matching the beat of some heart she could not feel. The shape in the air did not follow, it watched. The floor parted beneath her feet. A shaft of pure darkness opened in the membrane, a circle of absolute absence descending into nothing. The silver light did not reach into it. The edges were clean and sharp, as if cut by a blade. The silver voice spoke again. She must descend alone. Leto could not follow. Maia turned. Leto stood at the edge of the light, his stalks rigid, his cilia pulsing. He held his gift rattles in front of him, the dried seed pods shaking with the tremor of his body. He did not speak. He could not offer her anything she did not already have. She looked down into the dark. The cold air rose from the shaft, smelling of nothing at all. She stepped forward. The shaft of darkness released her without warning. One moment Maia was falling through nothing. The next, her boots met solid ground and the light returned, pale, diffuse, filtering through walls that looked like frozen smoke. The room was circular and maybe 20 paces across. The walls breathed, shifting in slow currents that left no trace of motion behind them. At the center, a pedestal. It rose waist-high from the floor, carved from the same black material as the cube. The top surface held a concavity, a perfect match for the shape she had carried through the derelict, through the gravity anomaly, through the membrane floor above. Maia crossed to it. Her fingers were steady as she pressed the cube into the hollow. A click precise, final. The cube sank into the pedestal and became flush with the surface. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the walls began to move. The frozen smoke swirled faster. Currents twisted into shapes that held for an instant and dissolved. She saw a world from above, blue and green, not unlike Earth but wrong, the continents cut at angles that made her stomach lurch. Then a face. Then a city made of crystal bridges that spanned a canyon so deep the bottom was lost in shadow. Then a machine. Then 1,000 things she could not name. The images came faster, too fast. The voice spoke inside her head. It was not the silver chorus from the cavern above. This was a single presence, calm and direct, and it did not use words so much as press, meaning directly into HER Chinese letter. The archive is linked to your neural architecture. You may access it through thought alone. Maia closed her eyes. She thought of the cube. Knowledge flooded in, not images this time, understanding. She saw the cube being grown in a factory of woven light. She saw the hands that built it, hands with too many joints, hands that moved with a precision no human could match. She saw it launched across space on a trajectory that took centuries. She saw it waiting. The hollows built it as a test. She understood the test now. The transfer was designed to kill anyone who could not bear it. The archive would not waste itself on a vessel that would shatter under the weight. The pressure behind her eyes built, not pain yet, but the promise of it. A warmth spread through her skull, starting at the base and creeping forward across her temples. It was not unpleasant. It felt like a fever that had not yet broken. The transfer is nearly complete. Maia opened her eyes. The walls had slowed, the images settling into patterns that almost made sense. She thought of the question before she formed it in her mind. What happens to the bearers who fail? They die. The voice delivered the fact without inflection. It simply stated what their architecture could not handle. The data load exceeded capacity. The neural network collapsed. Death was instantaneous in most cases. Maia swallowed. Her throat was dry. Why am I still alive? A pause. The warmth in her skull pulsed once, twice, then steadied. Your species demonstrates a significantly higher tolerance for sensory and cognitive damage than any species in the archive's records. Another pause. The voice seemed to be consulting something, searching through its own depths. Is this a known trait? Maia almost laughed. She did not. Yes, it is called pain tolerance. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full, heavy, the silence of a system processing information that did not fit its models. The walls of frozen smoke stopped moving entirely. They held still, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Then the voice spoke again. This changes everything. Maia felt the weight of those words settle into her chest. The warmth in her skull deepened into something solid, a presence that had taken root and would not be removed. The archive explained itself in a way that felt less like words and more like a shift in her bones. The hollows had designed the transfer to be survivable only by species with specific traits. Cognitive flexibility, psychic resistance, neural plasticity at levels far beyond baseline. They had mapped every known sentient species across their era. They had calculated the odds of survival for each one. They had never considered a species that survived through refusal. Not wisdom, not adaptation, not evolved resilience. Sheer refusal to stop functioning. The voice elaborated without being asked. The archive identified a pattern in her neural response that it could not classify. When the data load exceeded her processing capacity, her brain did not shut down. It rerouted. It kept working. It found pathways that should not exist and used them anyway. The system registered damage. It registered that the damage was being ignored. Your species continues functioning at levels that trigger termination responses in all documented cognitive architectures. The voice paused again. The warmth in Maia's skull flared once, hard, then settled into a steady background presence. The archive is now bound to your consciousness. You hold the sum total of every hollow species' knowledge. The walls of frozen smoke began to move again, but this time the images were different. They were not showing her wonders, they were showing her something else. A city on fire, a world cracking open along fault lines that had been stable for 1,000,000 years. Ships falling from orbit in slow spirals, their crews burning on re-entry. Maia did not want to see it. The archive showed her anyway. The hollows did not change, they were destroyed. The voice delivered the revelation with the same calm precision it had used for everything else. The archive was not a record of ascension. It was not a gift left behind by a species that had evolved beyond physical form. It was a tombstone. The hollows had seen their extinction coming. They had built the archive as a final act, a container for everything they had been. They had designed it to find a bearer strong enough to carry their memory forward. They had not found one. Until now. The warmth in Maia's skull pulsed. The pressure behind her eyes became a steady, familiar ache. She understood now that the voice was not separate from her. It was the archive's interface, layered directly onto her cognition. It would be with her for the rest of her life. She thought of the cube. She thought of the test. She thought of all the bearers who had died in this room before her, their neural architectures collapsing under the weight of knowledge they could not hold. She thought of her own architecture, stubborn and broken and still running. You are the first. The voice said it without awe, without wonder. It simply stated the fact. You are the first bearer to survive. Maia stood in the circular room with the frozen smoke walls and the empty pedestal and the new weight behind her eyes. She thought about what it meant to carry the death of an entire species inside her skull. She thought about what Leto's hive would do with a genetic archive that had survived longer than any empire in known space. She thought about the warning. The hollows were destroyed. Something ended them, something that the archive knew about. The warmth behind her eyes pulsed once more. Maia asked the question she had been avoiding. What killed them? The walls of frozen smoke went dark. The room held its breath. The archive answered. The image on the frozen smoke wall held her. A star, fat and bright, twisted in on itself. The light drained out of it in slow motion, pulled away like water running out of a cracked cup. The reed ships around it caught fire in pulses, not explosions, but something slower, something that looked like suffocation. Maia Calder watched the star die. Her breath fogged in front of her face. The cold in this room had a weight to it, a pressure that pushed against her skin from all sides. She asked the question. The archive's voice did not come from the smoke. It came from inside her skull, behind her eyes, a warmth that sat at the base of her brain and never fully left. The question was answered. The null entity found the hollows 13,000 years ago. The archive showed her the timeline as a cascade of images flowing across the walls, cities of woven crystal, farms of light, a species that had shaped its biology into art. Then the star dimmed. Then the cities went dark. Then the hollows scattered and died in the cold. Not in war, in harvest. The archive showed her the predator. It did not attack ships or bombard worlds. It simply arrived in a system and began to feed. It drank the electromagnetic output of the star, siphoning the energy that powered every civilization. The light dimmed. The heat dropped. The worlds froze. The species starved in darkness that stretched for decades. Maia's hands were steady. Her scars stood out white against her skin in the strange light of the room. She asked if the null entity was still active. The smoke wall rippled. A star chart appeared, covering every surface from floor to ceiling. The galaxy spun in slow rotation, and on its face were marks, thousands of them. Pinpricks of absolute black on the golden map. Each one was a star that had gone dark in the last 10,000 years. The pattern was a spiral, and at the center of the spiral, a region of space that the archive could not see into. A void in the map, featureless and empty. The warmth behind her eyes pulsed. The archive did not know what lay at the center. It had never known. The null entity's origin was older than the Hollow's records, older than their species, older than anything the archive contained. Maia asked how to resist. The smoke wall shifted again. A schematic unfolded across it, layer after layer of translucent blue lines that resolved into a shape she recognized. The dimensional folding principle, the same technology that kept the grave stable, but this was not a pocket of hidden space. This was a weapon. It would trap the null entity in a void pocket, she realized, and then collapse the pocket around it. The predator would be crushed out of existence, its energy dispersed into the space between dimensions where it could never reform. The schematic showed the weapon's core. It looked like the anchor. Identical, the same black cube, the same impossible weight, the same cold surface. She asked what the weapon needed. A living operator at the point of collapse. The pocket would seal around the operator and the target. The operator would trigger the collapse from inside. The operator would not survive. The archive showed her the sequence. The cube would activate. The pocket would form. The collapse would propagate from the center outward. The operator would experience the void pocket's failure directly, a burst of hard radiation that sterilized everything within a 5-kilometer radius. Maia stared at the schematic. Her breath fogged and faded. She asked why the Hollows did not use it. The archive answered with a single word that echoed through her mind: survival. The Hollows' cultures valued it above all else. Every law, every tradition, every ethical framework they had ever built was founded on the principle that life must be preserved. They could not build a weapon that required a volunteer to die. They debated it for 300 years. They never reached consensus. The null entity kept feeding. The star kept dimming. The species kept freezing. The archive was built in the final century, when the debate was still ongoing. It was meant to preserve the knowledge that the Hollows could not bring themselves to use. Maia was quiet, the silence stretched, the cold bit into her fingers. She thought about what the archive had called her species: higher tolerance for sensory damage, refusal to stop functioning. She thought about the scars on her forearms, the months of salvage work in zero-G, the way her body had learned to keep moving through injuries that would have sent any other species into shock and shutdown. She asked if a human could operate the weapon. The archive answered without hesitation: yes. She looked at the image of the star going dark, the reed ships burning, the light draining out of the universe one system at a time. She asked how to build the weapon. The schematic on the wall shifted again. The blue lines reorganized themselves into a new configuration. A power source at the center, the black cube as the focusing element, a series of stabilizers that surrounded the operator's position. And at the bottom of the schematic, a cross-section of a void pocket. The grave. The archive showed her the reactor in the grave center, the dimensional anchors embedded in the walls, the power draw that kept the pocket stable. She recognized every component. She had walked past them hours ago when Leto had guided her through the folded space. She had touched the reactor's casing and felt its steady vibration. The grave was not a shelter. It was a weapon. It had been waiting for an operator since the day it was built. Maia's finger tapped against her thigh. The rhythm was faster than she realized. She forced it to stop. She asked the archive if there were any other humans who had access to Hollow Archive. The warmth in her skull deepened as the archive searched. The smoke wall flickered through records, images of other archives, other sites, other species that had found the cubes and descended into the frozen rooms. Thousands of them, none of them human. The archive answered, no, she was the first. She opened her mouth to ask another question. The archive spoke before she could form the words. The records ended 300 years ago. The archive did not know what had happened since. The null entity's feeding pattern had been accelerating in the final centuries of hollow observation. 300 years of silence. The archive had no data on the current state of the galaxy. It did not know how many stars had gone dark. It did not know if the spiral pattern had reached the center. It did not know if the null entity was still active or if it had finished its harvest and moved on. Maia stared at the frozen smoke wall. The image of the darkened star held steady. 300 years. She did not know either. The silver light of the entry chamber felt thinner now. Leto stood where she had left him, his gift rattles clutched in the grip of his central stalk. His cilia were dimmed to a faint amber pulse. Maia walked toward him. She did not run. The presence in her skull made movement feel different now, deliberate, as if every step was a choice she had already made. Leto tilted his stalk toward her. The bioluminescence along his body shifted through a pattern she had learned to read as uncertainty. He spoke first. His voice was quieter than she had ever heard it. The archives showed me everything. Leto's cilia flared once, then dimmed further. He touched the gift rattles with the tip of a secondary stalk. A soft, dry rattle broke the silence of the chamber. His people had a legend, a great darkness that moved between the stars. They called it the Wind That Eats. They thought it was a story told to frighten seedlings before their first migration. Maia stopped in front of him, the warmth in her skull pulsed. It is not a myth. Leto was silent for a long time. His cilia shifted to gray. He looked smaller than he had when she first met him, a trader with a dying hive, carrying dried seed pods as symbols of trust. She asked if he would help her build the weapon. Leto's stalks went rigid. The question hung in the silver light between them. What does it cost? Maia told him. She said the words flat, the way the archive had delivered them to her. A living operator, radiation dose that would be lethal to almost every known species. A delivery window measured in seconds, no extraction option. Leto's cilia flattened against his stalks. The gray deepened to something almost translucent. He asked if she was certain. Maia shook her head. She was not certain of anything except the spiral pattern. The archive had shown it to her in perfect detail. Thousands of dead stars arranged in a path that curved toward an empty point in the void. The leading edge of that curve was 6,000 light-years from human space. 6,000 light-years was not far enough. Leto asked what he got in return. Maia told him the archive's biotech data was still intact. The genetic solutions his hive needed were available. He could save his people. Leto asked what she got. Maia looked down at her hands. The scars on her forearms caught the silver light. She thought about the system where she was born, the Salvage bays, the endless cycle of finding just enough to survive another cycle. She told him she got to make sure there was a future for her species to grow into. Leto extended his central stalk. The gift rattles hung from his grip, 3 dried seed pods woven together with fiber that had been grown, not cut. He held them out toward her. He said they were a symbol of trust in his culture, a gift that could not be reclaimed. If she accepted them, she accepted his bond, his hive's bond, everything he had. Maia reached out. Her fingers closed around the gift rattles. The seed pods were warm from his body. They made a soft sound as they settled into her palm. Leto said he would help her build the weapon. He would also record everything she did, every step, every calculation, every failure, so that if she did not survive, the knowledge would pass on to someone who could carry it forward. Maia thanked him. The word felt small and inadequate. She turned back toward the silver light. The presence was still there, waiting. The archive had not moved since she emerged from the shaft. She asked it one more question. What did the hollows call themselves before they were destroyed? The silver light pulsed. The presence inside her skull stirred. An image formed, a word shaped in a language that had no sound structures in common with human speech. The letters were geometries. The sounds were changes in pressure and temperature that no human throat could produce. But the meaning translated cleanly. The ones who thought they had time. Maia stood in the silver light with the gift rattles warm in her hand. She thought about the word, the weight of it. A species that had built a weapon, stored their knowledge, designed an archive that would survive their extinction, and still they had not moved fast enough. They had thought they had time. She looked down at the gift rattles. The seed pods were smooth against her fingers, warm where Leto had held them. She was not alone in this. The thought arrived without her forming it. She had a partner who had given her his trust, a species that could survive the transfer, a weapon that could end the threat. The pressure in her chest eased. It did not disappear, but it changed shape. For the first time since she entered the shaft of darkness, she felt something other than the weight of extinction. She felt purpose. Maia closed her fingers around the gift rattles and looked up at the silver light. The archive's presence was still there, but it felt thinner now, as if the transfer had used something that could not be replenished. She asked one final question. What happens to the sphere now that the archive has been transferred? The presence answered without hesitation. It collapses. The sphere was designed to be used once. The Hollows built it so that no one could extract the knowledge and leave the archive intact for someone else to steal. The knowledge is yours. The vessel that carried it must be destroyed. The silver light flickered. A low vibration began somewhere beneath the membrane floor. The walls of frozen smoke began to curl at the edges, peeling upward like paper catching flame. Leto grabbed her arm. His stalk wrapped around her wrist with surprising strength. 3 minutes, he said it like a countdown. The airlock now. They ran. The membrane floor rippled beneath their feet. The silver light flickered again, dimming to a dull gray. The walls were curling faster now, the frozen smoke dissolving into thin streams that rose toward a ceiling that was no longer solid. Maia's boots slapped against the trembling floor. The gift rattles were still in her hand. She shoved them into her jacket pocket and ran. Leto was ahead of her, his stalks pumping, his cilia flared bright with alarm. The airlock door was visible at the edge of the light, a dark oval in the dissolving wall. The vibration deepened. Somewhere above them, something cracked. Maia reached the airlock half a step behind Leto. He slammed his stalk against the control panel. The door began to cycle open, too slowly, the metal groaning against its housing. The floor beneath them shifted. A section of the membrane peeled away and fell into darkness below. Maia grabbed the edge of the airlock door and pulled herself through. Leto followed. The door sealed behind them with a sound like a held breath releasing. The airlock cycled. The inner door opened onto the Nestrex docking corridor. Leto was already shouting commands. The mycelial network responded, the bioluminescent panels along the walls pulsing in urgent patterns. The ship's intelligence was waking to the threat. They had 2 minutes now, maybe less. Maia followed Leto through the corridor. Her hand was in her pocket, wrapped around the gift rattles. The warmth of them was the only thing that felt real. The Nestrek disengaged from the sphere with 47 seconds to spare. Leto piloted the ship through the hexagonal aperture at full burn, his stalks pressed against the bioluminescent console, the ship's fungal mats glowing hot with stress. Behind them, the sphere began to collapse. The light did not go out. It folded inward, drawing the golden glow and the silver walls and the frozen smoke into a single point that shrank to nothing. There was no sound in vacuum, but Maia felt it in her bones anyway, a pressure that released all at once, leaving an absence where something vast had been. The sky was empty again, just stars and the faint curve of the gravity anomaly beyond. Leto leaned back from the console. His cilia were dim, exhausted. He looked at Maia. She pulled the gift rattles from her pocket and held them in her open palm. The seed pods were warm, the fiber was strong. She had a weapon to build, a threat to stop, a future to buy. And she had time. Not as much as the Hollows had thought they had, but enough. The Nestrek turned toward the bright edge of the system, and Maia Calder began the work that would end her.